question this evening is subcontractor default insurance, often referred to as subguard. Is it a suitable alternative for surety bonds? Chris, your thoughts.
Thank you. So, would you raise your hand if you've heard the term subguard or subcontractor default insurance? Okay, most people have. So, I get the unique opportunity to argue with myself on this. I'm going to debate myself. I'm going to give you the pros and the cons, and try to be brief about it. So, so it sounds like you all have a general idea what subguard is. It's insurance for the default of a subcontractor or a contractor. We give you a few of the basics. It's usually procured by the general contractor, not the owner, although theoretically, well, sometimes it is by the owner, but not normally. It's mostly used by sophisticated general contractors, mostly by construction managers at risk. The underwriting focuses on the general contractor, not on the subs, because the insurance company that looks to the general contractor to manage the risk and will really only issue these policies if it has a good relationship with the general contractor. Zurich is the major underwriter of subguard. There are some others, but Zurich is the one that most of us run across most frequently. It is not suitable for public projects generally because of the bonding requirements of public projects and because for reasons which I'll hit on in a moment, SDI, subcontractor default insurance, is not a suitable substitute for bonds, and therefore it does not have much play in the public arena. That could change. 25 years ago, I remember there was no design, build, construction of public projects in Mass or construction management risk or in Rhode Island, and now all that's changed. So things do change, that may change. Theoretically, all of the general contractor subs are going to be enrolled in the subguard. That's to prevent the general contractor from cherry picking which subs to put in the program or not. Very importantly, there are very high deductibles on SDI insurance, as high as $1 million per claim. Very rarely less than $500,000 per claim. What is it? It covers what the insurance covers. Some of these things are not covered by bonds, some are. Covers completion costs created by defaulting subcontractors, correction costs for defective work, legal costs resulting from the default, indirect default costs including extended overhead, job acceleration, and liquidated damages flowing from default. Okay, those are the basics. So here's the argument in favor of SDI insurance. It offered, and I've heard it many times, on behalf of clients of mine that are promoting it, on behalf of clients of mine that are considering it. The argument that it has much broader protection than surety bonds. The argument is it's not limited to the dollar value of the bond. If you have a $500 million project, $100,000 subcontractor, and a $100,000 bond on that subcontractor, and that subcontractor defaults and it screws up the whole project, you're limited to that $100,000 bond. That's the argument in favor. Whereas SDI, if the losses are $10 million resulting from that default, SDI claims that it will cover it. SDI proponents emphasize that the insurance is much quicker to respond to claims than bonds. They talk a lot about a perception, perhaps widespread, perhaps not. They claim it is, that bonding companies, sureties do not respond promptly. That instead of jumping in and taking care of a problem, they ask you to send them all the documents that their principal should have provided them months ago. That's their arguments. So the SDI people will tell you that they jump in right away, that all that has to happen is that there has to be an estimate of a qualifying loss that can be calculated, and the SDI companies, insurers, claim that they step right in quickly, and they start writing checks. And therefore, they allow the general contractor, that is the holder of the policy, to make immediate decisions to get the job back going, to have more control, to be able to fund those decisions, and not to have to wait while the bonding company decides whether or not to challenge your decision to terminate the subcontractor. So that's a major emphasis of those who promote SDI. In addition to, and of course, by doing that, they claim that it avoids costly delays, and you are allowed a general contractor is in a much better position to mitigate its damages. They claim as well that it is less expensive than surety bonds. I don't think there's any definitive proof one way or the other. They charge typically 1 to 1.5% for the SDI, which sounds comparable to bonds, but as I'm going to get into in a minute, bonds offer a lot more coverage the SDI, and so dollars to dollars, I'm not sure that SDI is comparable or less expensive. I think it's probably more expensive. The argument against SDI, it only benefits the contractor that owns the policy. It doesn't benefit subcontractors. There's no payment protection. To the question over here about protecting subs and payment, there's no equivalent of a payment bond aspect of it. It doesn't protect the owner in the sense that there is no obligation of the SDI carrier to the owner. There's no performance obligation. So is the owner getting comparable protection to what it gets under a bond? The argument against is absolutely not remotely so. I've already mentioned it's impractical on public projects. I've already mentioned on the cost, I think it's actually more expensive given that it actually protects a lot less. The detractors and those who are not big fans of SDI argue that the insurance is really nothing but a profit center for these construction managers at risk that peddle the product, and they push it hard, and without deciding whether or not their argument is correct or not, whenever you have any contractor pushing something like that hard, that consistently, there's usually some profit involved. I mentioned the very high deductibles. They're extraordinarily high. They are intended to deter a general contractor from trying to take advantage of the insurance policy and declare a default where maybe it's not so clear that there's a default, and just have the insurance company come up and clean up the mess. That's why they make these deductibles very high. But as a consequence, they can create some serious incentives for the general contractor to not make a claim on the policy, but dig in its heels inside with the subcontractor, one that might not even be performing properly, and argue that it's really the owner or the architect's problem because the general contractor won't admit it, but it doesn't want to pick up that deductible. And then finally, there's really no pre-qualification aspect by SDI insurers of the subcontractors that are enrolled. If there's any pre-qualification that goes on in the process, it's done by the general contractor that holds the policy. SDI proponents will say that that's where the good pre-qualification is done. SDI opponents would argue vehemently that bonding companies, surety companies, do a much better job of pre-qualifying their contractors to whom they issue bonds. They're used to doing it. They've been doing it for decades. They know how to read financial statements. It's their reputation and their bottom line on the line. Companies like Stark Weather Sheffield, when they issue these bonds, that they are in a much better position to make sure that only good qualified contractors get the bonds, and that may not be the case with SDI.
Questions on subcontractor default insurance? Yes.
Chris, with the Massachusetts file sub-bid law, right?
Yeah.
So the contractor asks for a bond for the sub.
Right.
The sub goes down. The LDs are not applicable to the general, right? Or are they? In other words, that bond is issued.
The LDs.
There's a separate contract between the state. This is on public work.
Right. You
File
said
sub-bidder has a contract with the state, so he can't. The GC can't be held liable.
no. The file sub-bidder has a contract with the general.
Well,
Are you talking 149 work
yeah,
or chapter 30 work?
149. No, 149.
Well, somebody help me. Am I wrong? I mean, I've never seen a contract of the sub directly with the owner.
The
So
the GC takes responsibility for that file sub-bid once he's awarded.
Yeah, so the answer is LDs would be assessed against the GC. The GC would pass through, presumably under the contract, that LD claim against the sub, and if the sub in fact defaulted and the bond is called, then that bond should answer because the general and the owner will be dual LDs on the bond. It's the way that should work.
yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.